thought I'd make a video to talk about abuse because I am deeply disturbed by the candidacy of Roy Moore and the allegations against Donald Trump. I know for a fact that God hates rape. He may not hate rapists, but he hates rape. When I was in Sunday school, I was told that no one gets into heaven without repenting, and I've been told that repenting means that you feel bad for things you've done to other people. And I have yet to meet someone who is sexually abusive who is repentant. I have been through a long string of abuse in my life. I'm especially concerned about child sexual abuse. I don't like child molesters at all. They don't belong in office. If there is a devil, the devil is behind sexual abuse. So all these Christians that are supporting these sexually abusive people are not following Christ. So when I was a little kid, when I was almost 4, my mother died. And I was adopted by her husband because my father and my mother had split up about a year before she died. I went through a string of beatings with him, and then when I was about 7, I was babysat by his new wife's brother, who proceeded to make me lay down and suck on my nipples and grind against my crotch and all kinds of stuff, and I couldn't breathe, so I couldn't cry out, and I thought that God had forsaken me because I couldn't cry out. And this happened about 7 more times each time he babysat. Then my stepfather and his wife decided to give me to my biological father to be raised when I was 10 because I was supposedly beating up my little brother. Now, that's not true. I never laid a hand on him. He was 4 when I left, and I was 10. But that's another story. My father, who I moved in with when I was 10, proceeded to leave his porn in the only bathroom the kids were allowed to use. And that occurred the entire time until I left the house at 17. I'm not sure that was illegal back in the 80s. However, it is called hands-off sexual abuse to expose your kids to porn. So then I joined the Navy because I was told that if I didn't join the Navy, I'd be put into foster care for being an incorrigible minor. So I joined the Navy. I met a man in the Navy after I'd been in for a little while. Technically, I could be classified as a disabled veteran because my PTSD occurred from things that happened in the barracks. I was sexually assaulted by at least 5 other men who lived in the barracks with me. But anyway, I was playing Dungeons and Dragons with these guys in the Navy, And one of them took an interest in me because we shared poetry with each other. He's a very good poet and an artist, but after we got together, he never took no for an answer. And for some reason, I thought that since he was my fiance, according to religious dogma, I didn't really have the right to say no to him. So anyway, he threatened to break up with me unless I left the military. So I got out of the military by telling them the truth about drug use and things that happened when I was in the delayed entry program. And then we moved in together, far away from home. And every night, with the exception of maybe 7 or 8 nights, the entire 3 years we were together, he would not take no for an answer. Sometimes he'd take no for an answer for an hour or two, but then he'd wake me up. He didn't care if I had to work the next day. He never hit me, although he threatened to a couple times. But he was constantly on me, and it was disgusting. He kissed like a wet fish. His name was Donald David Newsom. God hates rape. God hates sexual abuse. If you are confused about this, that's your problem. Please don't vote in any more perverts. Oh, geez. I also want to talk about the situation with my youngest daughter, who is now 20 years old. I was stalked by her father, and I didn't realize it was stalking behavior at first. He had been with my best friend at the time, and he had told us the story of when he got convicted of rape, that he had been in a blackout and didn't know what he was doing. And my best friend believed him, and since she'd been with him, I believed her, and I believed him. And we ended up together, and I ended up pregnant. By this time, I was developing PTSD and other mental illnesses. And by the time she was born, I was hearing voices. And I was feeling people touching me when no one was there. And the touching part when no one was there was the scariest thing I've ever experienced in my life. Needless to say, the state got involved because of 9 complaints against my mothering, some of which were warranted, some of which were fiction. He threatened the social workers in the case because by this time I'd lost her, and I had 2 other stalkers at the time. Jay Perlman and her father, John Michael Lang Sparger, and another stalker who was a pot dealer. So I took off with her in the middle of the night, and I got picked up in Montana, and I was going home, but I was so paranoid that I didn't want to tell anybody where I was going. So they took her away from me. And when I came back to my apartment in the town with the stalkers, John Michael had threatened to John Michael had threatened to go to the senators and the congressmen with the fact that they didn't want either one of us to have custody. So he ended up getting unsupervised visits with my daughter before I did. So I gave her up for adoption to the foster family to keep her away from him because he was very sexually abusive too. Now, my best friend at the time, somehow me and her boyfriend, who was abusive, ended up in bed, and he was thrusting so hard that it had to be obvious that he was hurting me, and he didn't care. So his name is Randy Linson. I don't like any of these people. Back in 1997, I went home and gave my father a hug for the first time. He never hugged me or touched me in any way, good or bad, up until then. And then the first time we hugged in 1997, he grabbed my ass. That was the last straw for me. And I guess when I report these things to the police, because I reported 11 men in Bellingham, Washington, to the police. I wrote the reports myself because I don't like the way the police write down what I say, because they don't put punctuation in it. They make it look like I'm an idiot. The writing is so bad and so unorganized that I look like I'm babbling. And I guess I just don't have the right kind of face or demeanor to get a case against any of these men. So I just want to say that sometimes the problem is not that these men don't get reported. It's that sometimes the reports get round filed or something. Because it isn't right to re-traumatize a survivor by making them undergo a rape exam. They took pictures of my naked body in the one rape exam I did, looking for bruises that were hardly there. And I was in that room for 3 hours, and I smoked, so it was doubly hard to sit in the ER for 3 hours with my clothes off around a bunch of guys taking pictures. The second time I ever went in for a rape exam, they wanted to pull out my pubic hairs. If I were to go and report that somebody just took $50 out of my wallet, they wouldn't do that to me. The statistics have shown that no more women lie about being raped than they do about anything else. And the statistic for lying about criminal behavior is about 2%. I don't get it. If multiple women come forward and say that Donald Trump sexually assaulted them, why is anyone doubting it?